Rest now. God is working in your life, my friends. There is a strange but beautiful paradox in the Christian life. The command to be still while the Almighty wages war on our behalf. In a world that glorifies noise, haste, and hustle, it almost sounds like madness to suggest that yes, you should rest, but that is precisely what is required, not because there is nothing to do, but because someone else is already doing the most important thing. Let us begin with a truth so simple it is often overlooked. God is not idle. He is not caught off guard by your sorrow, your confusion, your waiting. He is not delaying because he is unsure. He is not silent because he is indifferent. His hands are not tied by the state of your circumstances. On the contrary, he is active, deliberate, and sovereign. He is at work right now, whether or not you perceive it. Consider the night. The farmer plants his seed and then he sleeps. He does not stay up watching the earth, coaxing it with worry. He rests, and in the unseen depth of the soil, the seed dies, transforms, and begins to live anew. So it is with our lives. You may not hear the thunder of angels or see a pillar of fire in your hallway, but make no mistake, the King of Heaven is not still when his child is suffering. What then is your part? Simply this: trust enough to rest. Faith is not proven by the frenzy of religious activity or the volume of our prayers. True faith is shown when you can lie down in peace, knowing the battle is not yours but the Lord's. Do you not know? Has it not been told you that God's greatest work in human history, his salvation through the cross, was accomplished while the world slept, while the disciples despaired, while the tomb remained shut? Redemption was secured not in the spotlight of men's approval, but in the hidden chamber of divine mystery. So it is with your story. You need not understand the process to trust the one who holds the outcome. Now, let me be clear. Resting is not the same as resigning. It is not the same as doing nothing. Resting in God is an act of defiance against fear. It is the bold confession that I do not need to see the end because I know the author. Rest is the armor you wear when the enemy whispers that God has forgotten you. Rest is the rebellion against despair. To rest is to return, to place your heart back in the hands of its maker. It is to stop demanding immediate resolution and start trusting in eternal wisdom. It is to say, I do not know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow, and he is working even now. So I tell you, friends, rest, not because the journey is easy, but because the guide is trustworthy. Rest, not because you are giving up, but because you are giving over to the one who never sleeps, never slumbers, and never stops loving you. He is working in your waiting. He is building in your breaking. He is writing glory into the darkness, so be still and let God be God. God is not idle. He is always working, even when unseen. God is not idle. He is always working, even when unseen. This truth stands in sharp contrast to our natural assumptions. We are creatures bound by time and visibility, heavily reliant on signs, outcomes, and the satisfying rhythm of cause and effect. If we do not see something happening, we assume that nothing is. If we cannot measure it, we think it must not exist. But this is not the way of God. His movements are often veiled, his timing often confounding, his purposes too vast for our limited gaze, and yet he works, unceasingly, sovereignly, silently. We live in an age where motion is synonymous with meaning. We equate busyness with importance, noise with progress, and visibility with value. But God is not governed by our metrics. He does not perform for an audience. He does not operate on the surface. Much of his most transformative work happens below it, out of reach of our senses, in the quiet soil of our circumstances. Like seeds buried in the ground, his work often begins in places we are not even aware need healing or growth. Take, for example, the way God often leads us through wilderness seasons. From the outside, they appear barren, times of waiting, of confusion, of spiritual dryness. We might assume during such times that God has paused, stepped away, or become indifferent. But it is precisely in those wilderness moments that some of the deepest spiritual formation takes place. He strips away distractions. He silences the noise. He removes the false comforts we once relied upon, not to harm us, but to rebuild us from the inside out. His hand is not absent. It is simply working where eyes cannot follow. We must remember that God is not a performer who reacts on command. He is not waiting to be summoned. His nature is not like ours. He does not tire. He does not second guess. He does not forget. From eternity to eternity, he has been orchestrating reality itself, not in a cold, mechanical way, but as a wise and loving Father. Even when your life feels as though it is standing still, he is arranging, healing, shaping, pruning, protecting. Every moment is covered by his sovereign touch. When the Israelites were trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army, they saw only danger and chaos. But God saw deliverance. He was already working before they cried out. The sea had not yet parted, but the wind had begun to blow. Even when they saw no way forward, God was making one. He does not react to our emergencies. He prepares for them before they arrive. What appears to us as delay is often divine timing at work, doing far more than we could imagine or ask. Think also of Joseph in the pit, then the prison. Years went by. It would have been easy to believe God had abandoned the dream given to him in his youth. But behind every betrayal, every false accusation, every locked door, God was positioning him for a purpose far greater than Joseph could see. Each silent season was not a sign of absence, but of divine craftsmanship. The same is true for us. We may not see the threads being woven, but that does not mean the tapestry isn't being formed. We must come to terms with a humbling truth. We are not always meant to understand what God is doing in the moment. Our vision is short, our perspective narrow, but God is eternal. He sees the whole picture. He works with infinite patience and perfect timing. And more often than not, he works where we are not looking. Within our hearts, within the hearts of others, within the span of history itself. God is not limited to dramatic interventions or visible miracles. Sometimes his most profound work is hidden behind what we call ordinary. A conversation you didn't think twice about may be the turning point of someone's life. A door that closed might be the very protection you didn't know you needed. A season of silence may be shielding you from distractions so that your soul can finally learn to listen. His ways are higher. Not just different, higher. They move through dimensions of time and meaning that we cannot fathom. To say that God is working even when unseen is not just to acknowledge his power. It is to submit to his wisdom. It is to say, even when I don't understand, I trust that he is doing something holy. His work is not diminished by our doubt. His faithfulness is not affected by our fear. He is steady. He is sure. When the disciples panicked in the storm, Jesus slept, not because he did not care, but because he knew. He knew the wind and waves obey him. He knew the storm would not be the end. The same Jesus who slept in that boat is present in your life. And he is not idle. He is not pacing the floor of heaven, wondering what to do next. He is not reacting. He is reigning, and in his reign there is constant movement. Constant mercy, constant mastery. So let the silence not deceive you. Let the delays not discourage you. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. The silence of God is not the absence of God. It is often the chamber in which his greatest works are being formed. There are prayers you've forgotten that he still remembers. There are promises He has made that He still intends to keep. Resting is a form of trust, not weakness. Resting is a form of trust, not weakness. In our world, rest is often viewed as a luxury, a pause between productivity, something earned only after work is done. We are taught from early on that our worth is tied to our output. The more we achieve, the more valuable we are. To rest, then, feels almost like surrendering status, letting go of control, even admitting defeat. But this is a shallow view of rest. In the eyes of faith, rest is not laziness or escape. It is a declaration. It proclaims something about the nature of God and something about the posture of the soul. It says, I believe someone greater is holding this together. To rest is to place the weight of your life, your concerns, your future, and your battles into the hands of the one who is not limited by human capacity. It is to stop striving and instead dwell in the assurance that God is not only able, but willing to carry what you were never meant to. The world may interpret this as weakness, but in the kingdom of God, rest is a sign of maturity. Children worry only when they believe the parent has lost control. But the child who sleeps peacefully in the back seat during a storm does so because he trusts the driver. Faith is not only proven in great acts of courage or public declarations. Often, it is revealed in quiet confidence, in the soul that can remain still in the face of chaos. The ability to rest in God is a statement of spiritual strength. It tells heaven and earth that you know who your Father is. It tells your fears that they are not in charge. It tells your circumstances that they do not dictate your peace. It tells your soul that there is a deeper truth than what the eyes can see. In Scripture, we find that rest was not an afterthought. It was built into creation itself. On the seventh day, God rested, not because He was tired, but because He was finished. He set a pattern not of exhaustion, but of completion. Rest was the sign that the work was whole, the design good, the plan unfolding just as it should. When we rest in God, we mirror that same confidence in His work. We declare, it is enough, He is enough. We step back from our frantic efforts and acknowledge that we are not the center of the universe. This kind of rest does not come easily. It requires the laying down of pride, the surrender of control, and the quieting of the anxious voice that insists, if I don't hold this together, everything will fall apart. Trusting God enough to rest is one of the hardest spiritual disciplines because it demands that we take our hands off the wheel and believe that He is better at navigating our lives than we are. It is not the absence of action. It is the presence of surrender. Look at the life of Jesus. He often withdrew to quiet places, even when crowds pressed in, even when needs remained unmet. He took time to rest, not because He was overwhelmed, but because He lived in alignment with the Father. He knew when to speak and when to be silent, when to work and when to retreat. In His rest, He showed us that doing God's will is not about running faster, but about walking faithfully. He was never in a rush, yet He was never late. He moved with purpose, not panic. In following His example, we learn that rest is not a delay in our calling, but part of it. Resting in God also protects us from the illusions of self-sufficiency. When we refuse to rest, we may be saying with our lives, I don't trust you to handle this, so I'll keep carrying it myself. But the truth is, we are not built to carry everything. We are not designed to bear the weight of outcomes, timelines, and the approval of others. Those are too heavy for mortal shoulders. Rest is the invitation to set those things down and receive what God freely gives: peace, clarity, renewal, perspective. Rest also reorients our identity. When we are no longer defined by what we do, we rediscover who we are. Children of God, not employees in a divine system, not performers in a heavenly contest. Sons and daughters, Resting reminds us that we are loved not for what we produce, but because we belong. That kind of rest cannot be manufactured. It can only be received. It begins not with the body, but with the heart that knows it is secure. It is not weakness to stop, to wait, to breathe, to trust. It takes great strength to step aside and say, I will not run myself ragged trying to make things happen. I will rest in the knowledge that God is wiser, kinder, and more capable than I am. This is not the rest of apathy, but the rest of confidence. The rest of knowing that He who watches over you neither slumbers nor sleeps. If He is awake, then you don't need to be. If He is at work, then you don't need to strive. If He is faithful, then you don't need to fear. The world may not applaud your resting. It may call you lazy, unambitious, passive, but heaven sees something different. Heaven sees trust. Heaven sees a soul that believes in a God who does not fail. Heaven sees a life not built on adrenaline, but on assurance. Rest is not weakness. It is the quiet, unwavering confidence that the one who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Faith often requires stillness, not striving. Faith often requires stillness, not striving. This runs against nearly everything the modern heart has been trained to believe. We are conditioned to act, to solve, to intervene, to control. When something is broken, we fix it. When life feels uncertain, we plan harder. When things seem out of order, we grasp for anything that will restore our sense of power. In many areas of life, that instinct serves us well. But in the realm of faith, it can become a barrier rather than a bridge, because faith is not built on our activity. It is built on our willingness to stop and trust when nothing visible supports the hope we carry. Stillness is not passivity. It is not the absence of desire or the surrendering of passion. It is not complacency. Stillness is the deliberate choice to remain anchored when everything around you calls for motion. It is spiritual defiance against the panic that says, do something, anything. It is a posture of the heart that says, even if nothing changes today, I will remain unmoved in my belief that God is working. This kind of faith is not loud or dramatic. It often does not get noticed by the crowd. But it is deep and unshakable, forged in the quiet spaces where God refines the soul. Consider the way God often leads His people. Rarely does He give them the full picture. He gives just enough for the next step. Abraham was told to go, but not where. Moses was told to stand still and watch the salvation of the Lord, even as the sea blocked the way forward, and the enemy pressed from behind. Elijah heard not the voice of God in the earthquake or the fire, but in the still, small whisper. Over and over again, Scripture reveals that faith grows not in frantic motion, but in still surrender. Stillness requires an inner quiet, a silence that goes beyond the absence of sound. It is the silencing of our doubts, the calming of our fears, the refusal to be pushed around by every rising emotion or unexpected delay. This kind of stillness is hard. It demands courage. It means sitting with unanswered prayers, watching others move ahead, hearing no immediate reply from heaven, and yet choosing not to panic, not to manufacture solutions, not to create an outcome just to feel secure again. In the life of Christ, there is an astonishing calm that surrounds Him, even in crisis. When the storm raged on the sea, He slept. When Lazarus was dying, He delayed. When accused, He remained silent. This is not weakness. It is authority under control. It is divine confidence. His stillness was not ignorance of danger. It was mastery over fear. And this is the kind of stillness faith invites us into a rest that does not depend on perfect conditions, but on a perfect God. We often think faith looks like action, moving mountains, opening doors, declaring truth boldly, and sometimes it does. But there is another side to faith that is just as powerful, the side that waits, the side that listens, the side that refuses to run ahead of God. There are moments when faith must move, yes, but there are also sacred moments when faith must be still, even when everything in us is tempted to strive, fix, and make something happen by force. This stillness is not indifference. It is a powerful trust that God knows the terrain better than we do. It is the understanding that our striving, while it may make us feel responsible, can sometimes interfere with divine timing. God does not need our anxiety to accomplish His will. He does not require our frantic efforts to prove our devotion. What He desires is hearts that wait with hope, that remain in His presence, that do not rush out of alignment in the name of results. The world will always equate motion with meaning, but God often speaks most clearly in the moments when we stop long enough to hear Him. Stillness makes space for divine whisper. It creates room in our cluttered minds and hurried lives for the kind of clarity that only comes from above. We cannot hear eternal truths over the noise of our own efforts. We cannot receive peace while we are busy manufacturing control. Faith that learns to be still is faith that learns to listen, to discern, to recognize the voice that matters most. Stillness also trains our dependence. When we stop striving, we begin to realize how much of our perceived control was an illusion. We begin to see that it is not our plans that hold the world together, but God's mercy. We learn again what it means to be children, not strategists. Children rest because they trust their parents. Children don't schedule outcomes or manage their own safety. They dwell under care that they believe is good. To return to this childlike trust is not to regress, but to remember what it means to live by faith. There are seasons in life when all you can do is stand, not run, not fix, not advance. Just stand. But if you are standing on the truth, then you are not stuck. You are standing in the strength of something eternal, and that kind of stillness, though invisible to others, shakes the heavens. There is spiritual power in the person who can remain steady when all logic says to panic. There is strength in the one who can say, "I don't see the way, but I believe there is one." Faith that strives is often trying to prove something. Faith that rests in stillness has nothing to prove because it knows the one who holds all things. It lets go of the need to orchestrate outcomes and instead chooses to trust in God's timing, God's way, and God's character. It is not easily moved because it is rooted not in circumstances, but in the unchanging nature of God. When you have that kind of faith, quiet, settled, still, you will find that you are no longer exhausted by the constant pressure to make life work. You will begin to understand the deep, sustaining peace that passes understanding. You will see that the most powerful move you can make is sometimes no move at all, just the firm, unwavering decision to stay where God has placed you until He says otherwise.